Adopt a resolution authorizing the city administrator to negotiate and execute a professional service agreement with Schneider Electric to provide professional services for design and build maintain services represented in Phase 2 of the City and Port Joint Domain Awareness Center. There are 27 speakers on this item.
I'm going to ask the city administrator to, if you can frame the discussion. It is to approve a contractor, but there's a directive from the previous meetings that the council made, and if you can put it all in perspective for us.
Yes, Chairperson Gallo, members of the Public Safety Committee, it was important and is important for the city administrator and the city administrator's office to really make sure that we are honing in and framing the conversation that we're having around this particular item. This is about a policy that an option related to the contract. As the city administrator sees it, we have 3 possible directions that the council committee and the council as a whole can choose to go. The council can approve this project either as is and or with changes and allow us to move forward as recommended by staff, and we are holding firm to our recommendation. Option 2 would be that you direct staff to remove the city from the DAC and make this a port-centric DAC, and staff is prepared to answer what that would look like if you choose to do it. And option 3 is that you not move forward with this item and direct staff to take an alternate course in terms of ceasing work. Those are the 3 policy options that you have related to this very specific contract before you. This is an important project for the city, for the port, and the port can address that, and we do have port representatives here. And it may, for the sake of this conversation, and we need to be absolutely clear, it may affect future grants for the port, and they could speak to that in particular on their own behalf. This can be a viable tool and resource for the city. But we understand that we have an obligation and a continuing obligation to return to the council committee and the council with a privacy policy as directed in past meetings. And we are actually have completed an initial draft that we'll be taking out to the community shortly and can discuss that if questions arise related to it. But again, circling back to what the particular topic is at hand is what to do about Phase 2 contract and allowing staff to move forward with our recommendation. And as I've already said, we do believe we have a good recommendation and an opportunity here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Baig, and he can begin his presentation.
Right. So what I'd like to do is hear from our city staff, as well as the Port of Oakland has representatives here, and be able also to call them to the podium.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Public Safety Committee, Hassan Baig from Department of Information Technology. So we are here with the team, with myself and team from Port of Oakland and also from Oakland Fire Department Emergency Management Services Division. So what I want to do is just want to go over the agenda very briefly. Then I will ask my other team members to come in and talk about the different slides. So the agenda we have set up here is so we're going to talk about the Domain Awareness Center goals. We will just briefly update what Arturo was just earlier talking about, the purpose and the mission. We're going to talk about the challenging managing the flood of data. We will go into how we're going to bring the operational capability, and there has been a lot of discussion about what really DAC is all about, what it can do, what it cannot do. So we want to make sure that committee and council truly understand the whole operational capabilities of this Domain Awareness Center. We will also talk about the brief history about the legislative history of the project, and also the policy versus procurement. So we will get into that. Then we'll talk about what we have for tonight, which is the staff report and the resolution seeking approval for the Phase 2 scope of work. I'll talk briefly about what is included in the statement of work, and then we will talk briefly about the milestones and what are the next phases. So with that, I will ask Michael O'Brien from Port of Oakland to talk about the purpose and mission.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Public Safety Committee this evening on the importance of the Domain Awareness Center project to the Port of Oakland, and to provide some context for the center from the port's perspective. The center will provide first responders, city and port real-time information and a common operating picture to respond to emergencies and day-to-day operations. Why is that important? Well, the port, along with its partners, generates more than 73,000 jobs in this region and supports nearly 827,000 jobs across the nation. More than $40 billion worth of goods are shipped through the Port of Oakland each year, and close to 2,000 ships tie up at Oakland Marine Terminals annually. The Port of Oakland is the 5th busiest cargo port in the nation and the 3rd busiest on the west coast of the United States. The port has the infrastructure that is vital to the local and regional economy and is what we use to accommodate all those economic opportunities in the port and the area. A loss of even one day of port maritime operations would amount to millions of dollars in lost economic impact. As a public agency, it is our duty and our responsibility to take responsible steps, reasonable steps, to implement programs to protect the port, our workers, and our visitors. We also share infrastructure and transportation systems with the city, including BART, Caltrans, Amtrak, and 2 Class 1 railroad systems in Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Union Pacific. For all these reasons, we see the Joint Center as a vital security investment. There are 2 major reasons for the basis of a partnership with the city for jointly utilizing grant funds for the center. The Port of Oakland has the maritime-related infrastructure to protect. And the city is the first responder for the port in the event of an incident. The port does not have firemen. We don't have policemen. We rely on the city to provide those services. Let's talk about what maritime domain awareness means. It is the effective understanding of anything associated with the maritime area that could impact security, safety, the economy, and the environment. We need the capability to observe and verify what is normal in the maritime area so that when something out of the ordinary occurs, it is easily recognized as out of the norm. Then we can readily assess whether that situation is a threat and respond appropriately with our limited resources that we have in the city. Domain awareness and communications interoperability are 2 key criteria to the Port Security Grant Program, and those 2 are the basis for the center being funded. The port has a camera system along the fence lines and at major port intersections. The technology enables us to detect whether a restricted boundary of the port infrastructure has been breached. Another piece of relatively new technology being implemented in the center is the Physical Security Information Management System, or PSIM. The PSIM allows for central monitoring by a very small number of staff. The staff can then verify whether a situation is a true emergency. In some cases, verifying that a situation is not an emergency will save costs because personnel and resources will not have to be unnecessarily dispatched. Examples of potential incidents in the port area are a fire or a security breach. Managing event information and communications informs the operation so that it can be handled more effectively, especially for complex, multi-unit, multi-jurisdictional events. This is critical for life safety and protecting our community, the environment, and our facilities. So the center will help answer the questions: what is the situation that first responders are faced with when they arrive at an incident site? What situation exactly are we trying to respond to with police and fire resources? And what information do we have to report to the public for their safety? The integrated information system at the center will make it easier to answer these vital questions in a critical time frame for the first responders and the decision makers. The next slide. So let's use this slide for a couple minutes to talk about what the Domain Awareness Center is and what the Domain Awareness Center is not. The slide shows that the center is for Phase 1, and those items have already been accomplished. Port security cameras, intrusion detection system, that's the system I was talking about earlier that surrounds the port perimeter on our fence lines and tracks for intrusions coming into across the restricted areas. Also, city traffic cameras and city GIS is part of Phase 1 that's already been accomplished. And then Phase 2 is on the right-hand side, and that's what's before you for consideration are some of the systems that we're talking about integrating during Phase 2 with the Schneider contract.
So just to be clear, on this slide, so Phase 1 is completed, And the cameras that you're making reference to, 137 approximately, are on port property?
Those are the port cameras.
And the 40 other cameras are on city traffic cameras?
Primarily intersections.
And they're primarily located downtown areas, or?
There's a slide after my part that'll show that.
Continue. Okay, good.
Right.
All right.
So the center is focused on current operations and situation analysis and support for that operation using the available data feeds in the PSIM. These systems already exist. However, we need to be able to centralize and analyze all this physical security information to support our responders in the field with crucial information during an incident. As we know from the aftermath of disasters like Hurricane Katrina, coordinating information and response efforts are key to life safety. There has been some misinformation regarding security cameras relative to the center. To clarify, the cameras in the information system being used do not have facial recognition technology. None of our cameras have facial recognition. We do not intend to have facial recognition on any of our cameras. There are no school camera systems either in Phase 1 or Phase 2. This is not a fusion center. We have no agreements with the NSA or the CIA or the FBI to be able to access our databases or the information in that center. The sponsor for this port security grant program is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, not an intelligence agency. Here are some examples of events that have occurred either here or at other ports in the country in which interagency communications and an established common operating picture between first responders was absolutely vital, including critical infrastructure security breaches, shipboard fires, hazardous material spills, and natural disasters like earthquakes. In the event of a fire in the port area, information can be passed to police and fire dispatch. They can share that information to field units and watch commanders who can make quick and timely decisions about how best to combat that blaze. The watch can assist dispatch with the use of electronic maps to provide options on where to stage resources, and in a very large event can coordinate that information with other agencies that are sending resources to the scene. The center will facilitate getting information from multiple sources about the situation to those who need it to make quick and informed operational decisions. Fast, comprehensive, and reliable analysis of available information supports mitigating an event to protect the public and get the port back up and running more quickly. The center's staff needs to be proficient in day-to-day operations, flow of information and decision-making before they can hope to efficiently respond to a large-scale emergency. They have to know how to use the PSIM, how to communicate, how to relate that information to the agencies and the field units that need it. They're not going to be expected to come in during a large operation and be able to use the PSIM. So it really has to be used on a day-to-day basis to have any effect, any positive effect at a large-scale event where an EOC is activated. While major incidents such as an earthquake or fire are not frequent in their occurrence, the consequences to the public and the local economy would be devastating. Consider this. Each day that the Port of Oakland is not operational due to a major incident, we could see a multi-million-dollar loss in wages, salaries, business, and tax revenues. This Domain Awareness Center would significantly help to mitigate those incidents by providing increased coordination and communication with other agencies. This will be critical in the event of a full-scale emergency response in Oakland. Therefore, having all the relevant information flow through the center is essential. It will save lives. It will help protect our people, our community, and infrastructure in a major emergency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Mr. Chairman, what was the speaker's name?
No. Hold on. Let me hear from the city. Let the city finish their report. Go ahead.
Next slide. Mr. Chair, the question you were asking earlier, we included that one also. So really what we have is about 38, 40 cameras. These are all traffic cameras. And the number of cameras connected to our Domain Awareness Center at this time, what the earlier slide we showed was only 12. So only 12 cameras are live. So we included this one also because there have been some questions about the location of those traffic cameras. Of course, we cannot include the port security cameras. Those are all security sensitive. But the traffic cameras, these are all of our City of Oakland owned traffic cameras. They're linked to the Domain Awareness Center.
So the cameras are primarily downtown or throughout the city?
Yeah, they're primarily downtown, Hagenberger, Broadway, International.
Okay.
Through Mr. Chairperson, they are located in high traffic, high volume traffic areas designed for the Public Works Department to be able to observe traffic patterns and make necessary changes in traffic lights to allow for the flow of traffic more readily through those areas. So you'll see they're in Hagenberger along Broadway and in certain other major corridors of the city.
Okay. Now, go ahead and tell me about the contractor. We'll get to that. Let me just finish the report and I'll call the speakers. I'm going to do that. Hold on a second.
Good evening, Public Safety Chair and members. My name is Renee Domingo. I'm with the Oakland Fire Department. I'm the Director of Emergency Services and Homeland Security, and I will be covering the next few slides. This slide is about background and just legislative history. Some of you were here and some of you were not here during the time of these changes in terms of, yes, the Public Safety Committee, that's correct. All of you are new. In terms of the City Council, there are some that were here during this process, but I just wanted to outline here that in June of 2009, staff came to the Public Safety Committee and City Council with an informational report on the Domain Awareness Center concept and to request to proceed with the joint application for American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funding, grant funding that was part of Port Security Grants funding. Council and Public Safety supported our application. In July 13th and 2010, the Public Safety Committee and Council again approved our acceptance and spending of the ARA funding that was awarded to the Port of Oakland for the Domain Awareness Center design and Phase 1, including an MOU between the city and the Port of Oakland to move forward as a joint project and use our facility, the Emergency Operations Center, as the facility for the Domain Awareness Center system. On July 9th and July 30th, we came to Public Safety and Council, and I believe you were all here at that time, and DAC Phase 2 was approved to move forward. We were also approved to accept and spend the $2 million in Port Security Grant funding and enter into an MOU with the Port talking about Phase 2. So in November, on the 12th and 19th, we came back to Council because of the SAIC information and findings that came forward in the summer in August. And at that time, we requested to go back to the original RFP list to revise the RFP because the scope of work had also changed, and request Council and Public Safety approval to come back to you with our vendor after we went through that process in January of 2014, which is where we are today. And we did not know about SAIC and them not being in compliance until we were notified in August. Now we're into the policy versus procurement question. As Mr. Sanchez stated earlier in this presentation, we are looking for additional policy guidance from the Public Safety Committee and the City Council regarding the Domain Awareness Center and how you would like staff to move forward. And I believe Mr. Sanchez provided the 3 options available. Also, this report today is more about DAC Phase 2 and the procurement versus, and also should we continue to proceed with this project implementation. I will turn it over to Mr. Baig to focus in on the actual council report now regarding Phase 2 and the contract award and the process. Okay, Mr. Baig would like me to speak on this particular slide here. Some additional policy recommendations that staff have been discussing, and also the mayor's office recommended. One of these was related to the privacy policy. Mayor Kwan and the city administration is recommending the Public Safety Committee as well as the council consider appointing a Blue Ribbon Advisory Committee that would be comprised of citizens, privacy experts such as the ACLU, the Electronic Frontier, as well as legal experts to assist us with the privacy policy should this project move forward. Because if it does move forward, there may be issues that will evolve, and we believe that the privacy policy is going to continue to evolve and change if the DAC is expanded or its functionality is expanded. So that's one policy recommendation. The next one was staff is working with port staff to develop a demonstration, a PowerPoint demonstration, to help augment the transparency on the DAC capabilities, what the center will be able to do, and how the system is envisioned to work. That would be available for the public, the media, as well as the City Council, so that people can better understand what the Domain Awareness Center is going to be able to do after Phase 2 and what it could do in the future. Because we're just looking at Phase 1 and 2. We haven't moved beyond that, and I know there are a lot of questions, and staff understands there are a lot of what-if questions that are being posed by the public, by the media, by many people. And I don't think we're there yet, so I think we need to really do a better job of being more transparent about what the center can actually do. The last policy recommendation that we were asking you to consider, as well as the City Council, is to help, one of the things we want to do, because we haven't talked about staffing yet, and I know the focus of this report is not about staffing, but we will be coming back to you to talk about staffing the DAC, and I know there's been discussion about that. And the city and port staff are bringing on consultants to help assist us with doing a staffing study for our center and to provide options, various options for the City Council to consider regarding staffing the DAC. So those are those recommendations that we hope you consider.
Thank you.
So I will get into a little bit of this staff report today and the contract for Phase 2. So the report and the resolution is in front of you, members of the Public Safety Committee. I just want to talk briefly about the selection process after our experience with Phase 1 and the feedback we got from community. We went through some extra steps as far as the selection process is concerned. So what we did is we took sort of like a multi-pronged strategy and approach, and we not only did the Google search and whatever the tools, of course we have available, but in addition to that also we went to some of the sites where these sort of companies are listed, and we also talked to their existing customers, and we checked the work and their performance. The Phase 2 scope of work is about really the three major things. One is the integration, which Mr. O'Brien talked about, the Phase 2 work. And if you look at that Phase 2 work, a lot of that work is related to linking some of the public websites like WebEOC and NOAA and the other public feeds. The second piece of work in this effort in the Phase 2 is the integration of the standard operating procedures. We presented the SOP and the whole idea about integrating the technology into the operations of the first responders is so critical that we will have this information available so that response time can be lower. So that needs to be developed, that needs to be done, that needs to be implemented into the system. The third aspect is the maintenance and support. So once we are done with all these three things in developing the scope of work, the next step is going to be making sure that the contract compliance staff is okay with the contracts and going back to the city attorney's office to get their approval on the contract, the terms and conditions. So those are some of the pending tasks. Once we get the approval from the council to enter into the negotiations with Schneider Electric, we're going to proceed. As far as the performance timeline is concerned, the deadline we have is May 31st, 2014 to complete the Phase 2 work and spend this grant money.
So you can stand here today and say that you've done all the background check on Schneider and Electric. We have a very, very, clear policy in terms of nuclear weapon involvement and so forth. So are you saying that our staff, city staff, has done the background work on Schneider and Electric, and it does not violate our policy?
Specific to the...
Let me hear, just hear a minute. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Specific to the nuclear free zone ordinance, due diligence and the approval. So I guess maybe I would ask our contract compliance staff to come forward, and maybe they can talk about a little bit more in detail about the process, what they have done. But at the time, so it's a self-declaration process. It's pretty much submitted by the vendors. So based on their submission, based on their information provided, the staff goes on and they do their due diligence. So at the time when we did the due diligence, when we did the research, when we looked at the company, look at all the different indices, we found that the company has not been involved in the nuclear weapon work. However, based on the further research and the feedback we got from the community, we engaged Schneider into further answering. So where we are right now is all those questions we have received, or the feedback we have received from some of the community members. We have shared that information, and Schneider has requested that we provide that information to them in writing, and they will respond back to us in writing.
That you would provide that information in writing to whom?
To Schneider.
And then they will respond back in writing to you?
Yes.
And at that point, you determine whether they violated our policy or not?
That is correct.
And at that time, so what, I guess I'm trying to be clear here. So I think that from what I'm getting from you is we're not clear if they violate our nuclear weapons policy or not. I just want to be clear.
So just to clarify, staff did do the extra due diligence that may have identified things that were then subsequently identified by other members of the public. But to be clear, there's a complication here in terms of Schneider Electric itself. There is a global entity that is called Schneider. And under Schneider, the global entity, there are wholly owned subsidiaries, of which the Schneider that is bidding on this particular project is in the Americas, and it has a different name. The issue here is that the global entity, and some of the things that have been brought up by members of the public as we've brought those to the attention of Schneider, may relate to those other entities that are owned by the global entity versus the entity that we're going to enter into contract with. So what we're doing is asking for responses from Schneider on the very specific issues that were raised, which is they were raised this week. We need to afford them an opportunity to respond. Okay.
Well, let me hear from the public. Then we'll be able to respond to the public. So we can call the speakers.
Mr. Chair, there's one more slide. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
One more slide. Go ahead, and then we'll take the speakers. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the final slide. Basically, if council was to approve, if Public Safety Committee and council is to approve to move into the phase 2, the next phases or next steps would be phase 2 would kick off in February. We would hope to have a media visual demonstration available for the public, media, and council in spring. We are going to be issuing, as was stated earlier, the privacy policy for public review, comments, and edits. That'll be happening in February, and it would run through a 30-day period through March, through late March. Then we would return to public safety and city council on that privacy policy in late March, early April. We would have a staffing plan study, the Domain Awareness Center, O&M, and options to city council to accept grant funding for DAC staffing in April of 2014. EOC DAC phase 2 would be completed, and there is estimated to go live in July 2014. And then there would be informational reports to public safety, city council regarding DAC operations and next steps on a regular basis.
Thank you. Public speakers, please.
As I call your name, please approach the podium in any order and state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes to speak, and the time is shown on the clock before you. Thomas Ballantyne, Alan Brill, J.P., Eden Katz, Anwar Adden, M.T. Karthik, Phil Wolf, Brian Hoffer, Jacob Gillander, Myri Rajev, Derek Wallace, Aesthetic, Joshua Smith, Charlotte Williams, Mary Madden, Gabrielle Silverman, A.J. Cook, Joshua D., Linda Lai, John Klein, Heather LeMaestro, Ed Bial, Adam Sanchez, Jesse Smith, Brian Geiser, Asada Olabala, Alice Huron, Phil Wolf, Miguel Vargas.
Okay. You have 2 minutes, sir.
I'm Brian Hofer, and some of those people ceded time to me, so hopefully that won't be such an overwhelming list. Jake Gellender and Phil Wolf ceded me their full time. They're both present. As I stated, Brian Hofer, the Oakland Privacy Working Group. The issue before you is rather narrow and is not part of a larger civil liberties battle over the DAC. Is Schneider Electric eligible to be awarded the Phase 2 professional services contract at issue with tonight's proposed resolution? If not, are the remaining 3 bidders? The answer is clearly no, and it has been reassuring to hear staff state that they no longer believe Schneider is in compliance. You have received our cease and desist debarment letter and the reasoning for legal action, supporting evidence for grounds to debar all 4 remaining bidders on the Phase 2 contract. This past November, the city established that the Nuclear Free Zone Ordinance is applicable to this contract. Noncompliance is cause for disqualification and did in fact disqualify SAIC. To do otherwise now would be to act in an arbitrary and capricious manner and would be cause for legal action. I trust the city attorney has advised you on this. Further, because we have submitted adequate evidence, which must be considered from any source, this must be immediately referred to the city administrator for debarment process. A mentor of mine is fond of saying these words mean things. The ordinance is the express will of the voters of Oakland. I'm paraphrasing. Whereas the expenditure of city funds on goods and services produced by nuclear weapons makers directly conflicts with the city's public health, safety, morals, economic well-being, and general welfare. Whereas the public morality is affronted by the expenditure of city funds on goods and services produced by nuclear weapons makers. These words mean things. Lest you argue that the voters in 1992 were not concerned with crime like today's Oaklanders, 167 homicides were recorded that year, the bloodiest on record at that time. After failing with its supposed due diligence into the bidder's history twice now, staff is attempting to circumvent the council's express corporate authority to approve contracts granted in Article 2, Section 207, seeking by this proposed resolution to eliminate the need for further council approval. This is illegal and harms the separation of powers inherent in our city charter. I refer you to the July 26, 2013 email sent by Renee Domingo to Hassan Beg and City Attorney's Office Attorney Sotelo, and I'm quoting quickly. Sotelo, that language limits you from being able to develop and implement data retention at later times, even outside of Phase 2. Is that your intent? Domingo, no. We want the flexibility to do this after council approves the policy. Beg, how are you going to change after council approval? Domingo, we've done this before recently. Amadis and I will handle it. What else is going on behind council's back? You are the boss. It's time to clean house, and you can start with a no vote today. Finally, you are not deciding debarment today. That is for the city administrator, and after due process, notice and hearing has been held. At minimum, this vote tonight must be postponed. However, we have provided a preponderance of evidence for debarment, and a no vote today saves valuable city resources. Don't forget, our grounds for debarment are not restricted to noncompliance with the Nuclear Free Zone Ordinance. There are additional grounds. In response to what staff just said, and City Administrator's representative, Schedule P, Nuclear Free Zone Disclosure, must be signed. Paragraph 1, neither this business entity nor any of its subsidiaries, affiliates, or agents engages in nuclear weapons work. We have provided you with all the evidence you need to find noncompliance here. And based on the SAIC precedent, it must be followed here equally. There is a waiver. The restriction against contracting with a nuclear weapons maker may be waived if the City Council determines, not the Public Safety Committee, after public hearing, which has not happened, that a specific contract is essential to the proper functioning of the city government and that no reasonable alternative exists. That has not happened. Finally, if the city seeks waiver, and I realize this is a possibility, the instructions will not be the guiding language. Section E will be professional services contracts, subpart 1. All professional services contracts entered into pursuant to subsection shall be made with persons not designated as nuclear weapons makers unless the City Council finds that no reasonable alternative product or service exists. This is a more restrictive definition and will override these instructions. This is not a billion-dollar project. Multiple firms can handle a $1.6 million project that have no nuclear weapons ties. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Alan Brill, and I'm speaking today as a neighborhood organizer. I've lived in my neighborhood, which is in Mr. Gayo's district, for 30 years. I'm on the NCPC Neighborhood Association. You've been invited to many of our meetings. Some of our neighbors spill into Ms. Schaff's district as well. We have organized core trainings, neighborhood watch groups. We're in charge of coordinating our block captains to help combat crime in our neighborhoods. You know that it's been a primary issue of concern for our neighbors. However, for this council to use our concerns about crime and everybody's concerns about terrorism to steamroll city regulations and abandon what we feel is abandon your responsibility, if you accept this motion tonight, abandoning your responsibility for oversight of the contractors and what's going to be happening in the future is very, very problematic. To give them carte blanche to go ahead and move on to anybody else is absolutely unacceptable. We need to know the full intent of the DAC. Not only is it illegal, but it seems insulting to most of us that have looked over the information. We don't understand the costs of the city. You didn't understand it. The city staff was not forthcoming with what it would be. Taxpayers have no idea what's coming down the pike. That's a responsibility of yours. I don't believe you have any idea or control over where the data is sent, how it's stored and used. And your city staff, I appreciate Ms. Domingo being very direct, saying we need, and the mayor saying we need some kind of commission that really understands this before we move ahead. And I think that's before we move ahead, not after it's been approved and we're far into this and it's out of your control. I don't believe that anybody sitting here among the council members has seen the agreements between the port and the federal government. How did they get their grant? What does that consist of? What other agreements are there that we don't know about? That is the responsibility. You can't do it in a couple hours. You don't have the staff to investigate. You need to depend on those of us that have been out in here spending our lives for the last couple months, longer than that, trying to figure out what's really going on. You've got to listen to the words. They say, we don't currently have facial recognition software. We don't have any intent to use it. Well, so can you write into it that will never happen? I don't think you can. I don't think you will. I don't think that the privacy policy will say anything like that whatsoever. So my concern is that we move ahead and put a stop to this right now, take that option, and let's do our homework. Let's get our privacy policy intact. Let's assure that this is locally controlled, that this deals only with crime issues. Nothing else go beyond here. And as far as I'm concerned, you can't guarantee that, so that means putting a stop to the whole thing. I appreciate you listening to these concerns, and I'm speaking not only on my behalf, but on behalf of many hundreds of my neighbors that I represent. So I would like to cede the rest of my time to Brian.
My name is JP. I want to speak more broadly. Peter Seeger, who died today, was surveilled by the FBI. So was Martin Luther King.
Yet it's easy for some of us to forget these things, to forget that we read 1984 in high school. It was a long time ago for me. But I would ask that the council step back and reflect, to think about that book, and then to think about what has happened over these last 9 months. Whatever you think of Edward Snowden, he revealed a world that even Orwell would find astonishing. Consider this week's revelation. Little did Deanna Santana realize she was being monitored while playing Angry Birds instead of listening at city council meetings. Or such things as desktop cameras turned on without our knowledge, USB cables acting as spy devices, and having every interaction of ours on the internet potentially recorded. The list of government abuses of this technology goes on and on and on. This should all give you pause. And I would ask that you ask yourselves, what is it you are bringing to Oakland via this Domain Awareness Center? Here's one answer. You are bringing a weapon of mass surveillance to Oakland. You are handing the police, already under federal monitors because of their civil rights violations, and through them every state and federal security agency in existence, our Fourth Amendment rights on a platter. Is that what you were elected to do? Across California, 4,500 people have already signed a petition against the Domain Awareness Center. Many of them live in Oakland, and some of them left comments with their petition signatures. Many of you complain, that, just the people who oppose this come, blah, 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 blah. Well, we have a lot of your constituents' comments here, and I would like to read some of them to you who, can't be here tonight because maybe they have kids. Susan, I don't want to live in a surveillance city. Ruby, Orwell would be disgusted, and so am I. Down with the DAC. Glenn, I fear the government's blanket surveillance more than crime or terrorism. Patty, I do not think that Oakland is a city of terrorists. I am not a terrorist. Spend money on feeding people. Spend money on housing people. Spend money on babies. Spend money on many things other than pretend terror. Sandy, our family is totally against this program. We have been homeowners here for 20 years. Institute this DAC and we'll be looking to move. Sandra, it is meant to closely surveil everyone, no matter what activities or political affiliations. As an Oakland citizen, I feel this is unconscionable. Susan, it will become yet another bureaucratic, money-wasting nightmare that will do little or nothing to address the real crime problems in Oakland. Justin, it's wrong for the government to be focused more on controlling than serving its citizens, and it is a sad precedent for Oakland to set nationwide. Elizabeth, I live in Oakland. I own a small business in Oakland. I don't want to be under constant watch by the government. Sheila, DAC is an easy fix to the consciences of many who are too frightened to look deeper into the causes of this misery. Ewa, massive surveillance will only infringe on our rights, not solve the problem of crime. John, to have to even say why this is unconstitutional shows how far democratic capitalism has swayed toward corporate fascism. This is worse than Orwell. Wilson, this breaks down community rather than builds community. Patricia, I'm not interested in funding projects that further divide people, increase their sense of isolation from each other, and support the military prison industrial complex. Marina, because I live in Oakland and I don't want our abusive police department to use surveillance to monitor political activity. Holly, please don't disappoint the people of Oakland with this terrible idea. Donald, it won't work. It is anti-American, and it is fundamentally wrong. Charlie, I live in Oakland and feel this is counterproductive to reducing our crime problem. Andrew, the government has proved repeatedly it cannot be trusted with this much surveillance capacity. I live in Oakland, and I'm afraid of crime, but I'm much more afraid of a system like this. And finally, Darren, what country is this again? So there you have it. I mean, a whole list. And that's just a small sample, by the way, of 4,500 signatures that have already been signed. And I would just take my remaining second, never mind. Somebody else will say it. I cannot understand how Renee Domingo could stand there when we have emails that say
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next speaker, come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm Aesthetics, A-E-S-T-E-T-I-X.
A little closer so we can.
Okay.
Hey.
I am Aesthetics,
you go.
A-E-S-T-E-T-I-X on the list. So thanks for having this hearing and such. Last time I was here, I think it was in November, I submitted a list of questions about privacy and awareness. I am a computer security expert and I work with sensitive data, and I was curious if you had answers to those questions yet.
I think we'll respond to that question. I'll get our staff to do that, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. That's my main thing, because as I work with sensitive data myself, I don't understand how you could make a well-informed vote on this without having answers at the very bare minimum to those questions, including like data retention and access.
So if you can state some just for the record that you submitted, because I don't have them in front of me. So
it was when I came up and asked the questions at, I think it was the November City Council meeting.
What other questions?
Some of the questions I asked included data retention. How long will the data be retained for? Who will have access? What qualifies them to get that access? Will the company that gets sponsored be subject to a third-party security audit? If so, by whom and why? And what is the history of other audits they have done? And past that, what happens if there's a data breach? So, for example, HIPAA has all kinds of legal protections. There's also financial data has protections like that too, and I'm curious if this will be subject to the same rigor. So that's kind of the gist of it. I can ask more questions privately.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'll have staff respond to you once we're done with our speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
My name is Adon Katz. I would like to make a comment on the Domain Awareness Center in several different capacities. As a first-time homeowner in Oakland with my wife and young daughter, as the editor of 2 relevant books on this topic published by NYU Press, one entitled Cybercrime and the other called The Global Flow of Information. As a lawyer committed to facilitating homegrown technology startups in Oakland, as a co-founder of PseudoRoom, a community center and maker hackerspace at 22nd and Oakland, where I have my office. As an affiliate fellow and former executive director of the Information Society Project and lecturer at Yale Law School, a former international affairs director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and as a father and husband living in a neighborhood that has seen a concerning increase in robberies and burglaries over the decade I've lived here. As a lifelong student of the intersection between law and technology, I'm deeply concerned with the way in which these contractors are proposing data mining mass surveillance for civilian law enforcement in this project, turning our core principles of fairness and due process, human rights, and civil liberties upside down and inside out. Guilty before proven innocent. No requirement for reasonable suspicion, particularized evidence, or proportionality before our very own citizens are targeted for surveillance. And warrantless wiretapping projects funded by the Department of Homeland Security have no need for oversight or an auditable system of checks and balances, and with no provisions to restore the faith of the American public in there being boundaries and limitations on the information gluttony of the U.S. electronic intelligence initiatives. The reason I must take this opportunity of addressing this decision-making body for the first time for me is because of a promise I made myself when I was in Europe about 8 years ago. When I was speaking at a data protection and privacy conference, a colleague was showing me around Amsterdam on a tour of historical sites for the Dutch resistance in World War II. There was this data processing building that contained thousands of documents with information about the religious affiliation of Dutch citizens. These data centers made the Nazis' job of finding Jews, gypsies, and other people considered undesirables much easier when the Netherlands fell under German occupation. Heroic members of the Dutch resistance, including my friend's martyred ancestors, succeeded in destroying the files stored at that building without harming any people, which undoubtedly saved hundreds of lives. These days, that would not matter because of all the backups and redundancies. I resolved then that I would never forgive myself if I sat silently as a bystander while something like that place were being built around where I live during my lifetime. The Oakland Domain Awareness Center, fundamentally in its foundational technological infrastructure, is unconstitutional under the First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments of the United States Constitution, as well as the California constitutional right to privacy in Article 1, Section 1, enumerating our inalienable rights as state citizens. Please do what you can to stop it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, honorable members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Linda Lyon. I'm with the ACLU of Northern California.
A little closer.
My name is Linda Lyon. I'm with the ACLU of Northern California. I submitted a letter earlier today setting forth our position in detail. But briefly, I just want to emphasize that the ACLU is opposed to the staff recommendation as currently proposed. We have two main concerns. They are transparency and oversight. The staff proposal seeks broad discretion to negotiate and execute a contract with Schneider Electric, and also authorization to select a substitute contractor without returning to City Council if the negotiation should fail. We urge you to oppose both of these provisions. First, with respect to the contract with Schneider, there is a lack of sufficient information. There has been insufficient transparency to date with respect to the purposes, costs, and capabilities of the DAC. We've previously explained our grave privacy concerns about the implications of the DAC. Others here have done that tonight. I won't belabor the point. I appreciate Ms. Domingo's candor. There has been a lack of transparency with respect to the capacity of the DAC, with respect to the purposes. We repeatedly hear maritime port security. Why then are there cameras proposed to be all over the city of Oakland, automated license plate readers? Right now, it may just be 135 cameras, but under the City Council resolution, the city can add cameras, the number of cameras, if it's the same system without returning to City Council. So again, this provides for comprehensive monitoring of innocent Oakland residents. That has nothing to do with the purpose of maritime security. The council should demand information about these areas, greater transparency, before providing unfettered discretion to negotiate the contract. With respect to a substitute contractor, the council absolutely should not cede its oversight responsibilities. The legislative branch is an important check in our democratic system of governance, and we urge you not to cede that role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Madden with Oakland Privacy Group. There's a reason that all of the Domain Awareness Center contractors are also involved with nuclear weapons. Mass surveillance is an injustice you subject upon people that you're at war with, people that you're bombing, not a community that elected you to serve. Mass surveillance is a dirty business and not the kind of business Oakland should be in. Homeland Security grants don't come for free, and as we all know, they won't cover the whole bill. Oaklanders will be stuck with a bill for over $1 million a year, plus some contractor they're going to hire, to track our every move as we go about our daily lives. I do not want to pay for this. How are you going to pay for this? City staff have been dishonest with you about the real price tag on the spy center. City staff have also already shown that they're prepared to ignore or circumvent even the most paltry privacy policy that you implement. We really need you, the members of the Public Safety Committee, to protect us from these abuses. Please, won't you use this opportunity to do the right thing for Oakland and stop mass surveillance in our city? Just pull the plug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse Smith.
Now, while the mayor has no executive power over this issue, this all falls on the council members, and you are responsible for what happens here. Your culpability comes from how well you know that you don't understand what is being proposed here. None of you are literate in this technology or in analytics. This is gearing up to be another Goldman Sachs ordeal, where your naivete is preyed upon. They're vultures coming in to take advantage of what they see here. Cal showed this by saying that the SAIC would be supplied data, but they would not be allowed to analyze it, which is the only thing more naive. It actually is bizarre that the gentleman from the port here said that the cameras don't have facial recognition software. I can take this feed off that camera when I get home, download it, and run it through a facial recognition. That's not how it works. Your phone doesn't have a facial recognizing camera. It's the software. So it's all about consolidating and centralizing this data. That's what makes it valuable. And have you even thought of selling it to Google? This is a huge amount of data. It's extremely valuable. This is the largest data collection since the Stasi, and it's more applicable than anything in history. You're giving this away. It's going to be the biggest giveaway since the island of Manhattan. This technology also has medical applications that can bring down our infant mortality rate to the state average. That's using a technology called Eulerian magnification, which also uses normal cameras. It's all about the software. It's who has their hands on the data. It can help our senior citizens. It can also, with health problems, it can help our shameful legacy of the unprecedented police corruption we have here. It can spot the bad cops. You are not going to strike a good deal if you don't know what this stuff is. One of the things overlooked in the Snowden scandal was that a large amount of that data was corporate espionage being perpetrated by the federal government, and this has caused a lot of outrage in the private sector. You're going to be scaring businesses away from the most federally surveilled area in the country. It will be stupid for any tech company to move here. Now, do you think a police state will satisfy the Rockefeller resilient
Your name, sir? Ed Bio. Okay.
Now, the Rockefeller Resilient City Challenge, which this, I understand, is vying for their prize money. Do you think that the Rockefeller Foundation wants a police state surveillance system to demonstrate resilience? The problem in Oakland with resilience in the event of a large disaster is our social cohesion. You're not going to create social cohesion by increasing the surveillance. That does not compensate for the fundamental problem, and it won't even be able to address it should something happen. The Rockefeller Foundation, they're not idiots. And if you think a police state is the thing to satisfy them, then you're with the Tin Hat Brigade that looks at the Georgia Guidestones and thinks that's some kind of conspiracy theory. Now, we can also use the DAC software to monitor the city council, because computers are better at detecting insincerity and emotion than human beings are. As discovery software advances, which is your industry as lawyers, discovery software is replacing people who work in the discovery section, and I believe it can also replace you here. And I say artificial intelligence is better than no intelligence.
Thank you.
My name is Asada Oligbala. I live in Oakland. This particular issue reminds me of the 60s, when we had the cameras on us, when you were trying to demonstrate for your human rights. And white folks are coming out now about their rights being violated. COINTEL had our rights violated for a number of years, way before yours were. Anyway, if you're going to look at the cameras and the need to have them, won't you start with your police department? Because Robert Warshaw just identified as your monitor that the policies require that police are supposed to have cameras. And he identified in his report that these cameras are not being utilized. So if you want cameras to be utilized, start with their cameras that are not identifying the police abuse and misuse of force. Then when you get that straight, which has been going on since 2003, they've been mandated to have these cameras, and they haven't been used functionally. Then come to this building and talk about cameras on us as citizens. But your police department are not utilizing the cameras. It wasn't utilized with the BART police system. When the highway patrolman killed that man last week, the cameras weren't on. And when that 16-year-old boy was shot, the cameras weren't on. So let's talk about some cameras with the police department. Monitor them. Then come to us as citizens to talk about having some cameras on us.
Thank you.
Brian Geiser. I agree with all the previous speakers, and I know that you've had a lot of communication with the Domain Awareness Group and the Oakland Privacy Group and the ACLU and everything, and I agree with all of that. I just want to pick up a little bit of miscellanea. I'd like to start out by saying that, you, the council members, are our representatives to the municipal corporation. You are being misled and may even being purposely lied to. This is important because you are our representatives here, and you are, as the ACLU member said, you're part of the constitutional setup of this. A couple other items. FEMA was started in the Carter administration. It was solidified during the Reagan administration, and it was originally the Federal Emergency Military Administration. At some point, they decided that sounded a little tough, so they changed it. It is a part of both the military and the intelligence agencies, and I would like to say that they are very good as part of their knowing what their learning process is. This has been, a system like this has been set up in other cities around the country, and they know how to do this. They've learned from their mistakes. We hear about this maritime domain awareness, the port representative said. Same thing happened up in Seattle, and it expanded very quickly to include parts of the city. One thing that you're not being told, or at least I know you guys are aware of this, but the city representatives are not telling us at this phase, is that there's a phase 3. And it will be continuing on beyond that. People have mentioned that it's merely software to bring in all the rest of this. And then finally, I would like to mention, I'm hoping that everybody is wise enough to understand about the corporate structure and the shell game that happens there, that at 1 minute they're, for one purpose they're one thing, and the next minute they're something else. All of it's just a shell game, and Schneider is violating our rules. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Klein. So, given everything that's been said, this really can't move forward tonight, and you certainly can't turn it over just to staff to take care of it. There is really a lot of questions. I should know I gave you a list of 117 questions. You have those, so it would be nice to get some attention to those. And this is not just about a contract, Mr. City Manager. This is not just about a contract. What we really need to hear from you, we need to hear from you about the big picture, about what we've learned from Snowden, what we've heard about what the NSA has been doing, and that sort of thing. And I'd like to take all of the emotionality out of it and, and just kind of bring it all down to earth. The government is listening, the NSA is listening to all your phone calls. They're sweeping up all your emails. They're putting spyware in your phones and in your little online games, okay? So that's not hyperbole or anything. That's what they're doing. And so that needs to be a part of the discussion. It's just not about a contract, okay? So there's all these things that we don't like. You should be pushing back on the surveillance state, not becoming part of it. I think Oakland should become a surveillance-free zone. It should be a refuge city for whistleblowers. Any time that there's a request for information from anywhere, like a national security letter, that will become a public document. And there's so many ways to push back. All the things that you don't like about what the government is doing, the secret court rulings, you can push back on all of those by having a surveillance-free zone and saying, you can't do that here. Because we've done it before, and we can do it again. And so we need to hear from you about the big picture. It's not just a contract.
Thank you. How many more we have? Okay.
Hello, my name is Derek Wallace. I am a new Oakland resident. I just moved here 6 months ago with my girlfriend. She works with the elderly downtown, the people least able to take care of themselves. And I'm a college student attending Laney and BCC with a plan to transfer into UC Berkeley in energy engineering. My major is going to be making solar panels. So I was hoping to meet all of you all, if you're still around, on different terms, because I want to start a business in Oakland. So you only get one chance to make a first impression, and I guess this is it. Thank you. We live over in Cleveland Heights, which I guess is District 2, and in the past few months there's been some gunpoint robberies. So at the point where my girlfriend comes home from work late at night, I go out and meet her and walk back with her, because I don't feel exactly safe there. The other night we had a mentally disturbed woman accost us on the street, and we called the Oakland PD, and they showed up and they did a very fine, very professional job. So I'd like to say thank you to them for that. Not all police are bad or evil and want to beat you down. That's not to say that there aren't those that do, but that's another story. So the reason I'm here is my landlord asked us to come and inquire about the possibility of including a beat cop or beat cops around the Oakland High School neighborhood as a better use of public taxpayer dollars. I understand that there's some Homeland Security money involved. There was some involved with the FEMA cut down the eucalyptus, dump Monsanto Roundup. I wasn't in big favor of that. I don't know if you can tell from my shirt, but I'm wearing a No on 32 campaign. That was asking that corporations not have the right to silence unions' right to vote. So I walked up the steepest hills in San Francisco and knocked on doors to get unhappy faces and turned away. Got a couple thumbs up and some support, but basically it was in support of teachers, firefighters, and police unions. My best friend's a police officer. We wrote a comic book together about an actual Kansas City police officer. Kansas City is where I'm from. And we contacted the Oakland PD about maybe passing it around, and we never heard back. So it just kind of disheartens me that, you know, we would put this much personal effort into helping the police and firefighters unions, and they'd try and poison us and surveil us. It's just kind of disrespectful, if you ask me. So I'm not going anywhere. NASA's projections show that by 2100, this is the last bastion. This is Starfleet. This is the place where the precipitation is going to stay and where the heat's not rising. Go to YouTube and look up NASA's own projection, 2100 projected U.S. temperatures and precipitation. I'm not a big fan of this DAC. I don't know enough to speak on it, but I can say I'm sorry that they put the Nazi swastika up. I think that's horrible. It's horrible. There's better ways. It's not the same as humans being skinned alive. It's people taking cameras, filming your face, and putting it in a database. Yeah, it's horrible, but it's not the same as human lamps shade. So chill out on that stuff if you're listening.
Thank you. Your time's up, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Don't start my clock yet. I've got information I'm going to hand out to the council. I've got 8 CDs with PDFs on them. And then of this same data, I have printed copies for Cal, McElhaney, and Schaff. So 1 CD to everybody. Pass it down. All right, well, I'll go ahead. Okay, this is a report that you're getting on CD and some in print, and you can find it on Scribd, possibly by the title of the report. The report is titled, "The Purchase, Installation, and Use of Hewlett-Packard Computer Hardware Within the City of Oakland and Port of Oakland Joint Domain Awareness Center Violates the Oakland Nuclear Free Zone Act." Now, you're all here talking about Phase 2, but we're not done with Phase 1. All of the equipment installed in the Domain Awareness Center was HP equipment. So not only did you hire a nuclear weapons company to do the service vendor work for Phase 1, you also purchased HP hardware. Okay? So in this 31-page report that you've got, I spell it all out for you. I include the ordinance. I have evidence showing that HP is definitely a nuclear weapons vendor. Okay? Then I get into the connection between HP and Los Alamos nuclear laboratories. I've got articles relating to that. I've got articles relating specifically to the computers and what they do in regard to nuclear weapons testing. Then I have also the County of Marin. They have the same program. They have a nuclear-free zone ordinance. They have a list on their website of defense weapons contractors that have nuclear work, and they include Hewlett-Packard 3 times. Okay, this is the same thing, nuclear-free. Okay, so they've got Hewlett-Packard Express, and HP Enterprise Services LLC. So those companies I read to you are respected in the industry for being nuclear weapons contractors. Also, I have given you the specific invoices of the HP hardware, examples of them, and it's line by line, item by item. So you're not done with phase 1 yet. You have to get the HP equipment out, and that's what that letter states and shows, okay? I have much more that I'll be giving at the regular city council meeting, but also I'd like to know if Fire One EOC DAC has a Sun Oracle exabyte data storage server. Can I get a yes or a no from Renee? I don't know. You don't know? You don't know anything about it? Hassan? No?
She'll respond to you afterwards, sir.
Okay.
Just ask the question and we move on.
Okay. So as far as your security of your information on your computer hardware, here's your original copies back. Okay, and I'm not a terrorist. I'm not an intelligence agency. If you want to have security, keep track of your paperwork. Okay, those are originals. I'm giving them back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
I submitted my request for time to speak online. I don't think it made it to the final list, but I can get some time. Cool.
What's your names, please?
Sure. So I had some comments.
Your names, please.
Oh, my name. Sorry, my name is Matt Sennett.
Her name.
And the lady?
Oh, her name?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I had some comments, but I'm going to save them. I'll save my notes for now. I have a really simple question. Who's it going to be? Who's going to stand taller? Who's going to feel proud? Who's going to look me in the eye right now? You know, it's as simple as that. You're in charge.
Thank you. Got it?
Good evening, folks. My name is Adam Sanchez, and I realize that what I'm about to say is probably not too popular amongst my fellow citizens and taxpayers and what have you. However, this nation was founded on the right to have differences of opinion, if you will. So I care for all my brothers and sisters who spoke tonight. However, I feel they're a bit, perhaps, emotionally misdirected. And I also wanted to say that I wholeheartedly support Mr. Nye's previously mentioned comments about the neighborhood. He left, so I can't thank him in person. But I am here in support of the DAC as a local homeowner and concerned taxpayer, voter, and veteran, and father of 3 school-aged children. In these trying economic times of unrealized budgets and strained resources we all face, we are challenged to do more with less. And technology is a means by which we can aid our brave and honorable men and women who provide safety and security for our beautiful city. And that is why the DAC will free up police and fire staff to care for other areas of concern for Oakland that need it. Okay? We Oaklanders, let me finish with
Just stay focused. Go ahead.
Thank you, with all due respect.
Thank you.
We Oaklanders desperately need to have an integrated approach to community safety, and I believe the DAC is the answer, irrespective of whom our city awards the contract to. After listening to the concerns of our fellow folks here tonight, I realize there are 3 tenets we need to further explore. One is we need to further research the vendors. 2, we need to build boundaries around
where these cameras and the data center collections are taking place. And 3, have oversight of a third party person or concern. Our 3 children are no longer safe to walk our family pets in our neighborhood in Montclair, in which we have worked so hard to obtain this privilege. I strongly urge the board to further take those 3 tenets that I exclaimed previously. And if technology isn't the answer, ladies and gentlemen, I challenge everyone here to put down their cell phones and turn them off for a week and see how well we carry about our daily lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time? Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
My name is Alice Heron. I'm a resident of...
A little louder.
I know, I'm so short, it's hard. I'm a resident of Oakland for the last 11 years, and I just want to applaud the gentleman before me. It is very hard to get in front of a group of people who can heckle, and even though everyone believes in the right to free speech, that you can denigrate somebody just for speaking their mind. As an Oakland resident, unfortunately, I hate to use the term, I was the victim of a robbery, standing at a bus stop at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, just trying to go to work. The gentleman, or the person, grabbed my bag and ran. I chased after him like an idiot. I thought I saw his driver's license plate. I misread it, probably because I was so upset. And the police could not find him. They can't even basically investigate. When I entered the police car for them to take the report, I felt more sorry for the policeman than I did for the loss of my property. I heard the dispatch of all these calls, all these people so desperate for help. And I thought, is there anything we can do to help make their lives just a little bit easier so that we could catch the people who are perpetrating these crimes? I don't know about contracting law, well, at least I should say, with regards to Oakland. I think that some concerns have been brought up, but I hope the council reviews it in the eyes of regulation and the law, and that they realize that there are some of us who are very, very concerned about crime. And if we could have just taken a picture of that guy, I was standing right by a traffic light, maybe we could have caught him. It's not, my property is not that important, I get that, but I really do feel like we need something to help the police out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miguel Vargas, and I just wanted to speak to the last couple of residents that have fallen for the lie that this video surveillance is for crime. It's gonna protect this man's family in Montclair. There's not gonna be any cameras in Montclair. That's not what the DAC is about. And I think it's irresponsible and shameful that there has been city staff that has been suggesting that this is gonna help with home burglaries. There's not gonna be any cameras in residential neighborhoods. This is not about crime. So I just wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay. That are all our speakers.
Ariana Pochero and Becca Town, other names have been called.
Okay, everyone's been called. Thank you, and yes. Did you already fill out a card? Okay, if you can go ahead and fill out a card. And meanwhile, I'll take some comments, questions from my council members. Council member, are you okay? We'll let her go ahead and. Yeah. Okay, fine. That's fine. Go ahead and, gentleman has yielded his time to you also.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to address a
Your
comment.
name, please? Just
Tanya Love. I live in District 2.
Thank you.
The city administrator said something about the Schneider Company, the concerns about the Schneider Company's nuclear contracts was because it was
the global company and not the contractor that you're working with. So I just wanted to reread Measure T for you, just in case you're unfamiliar with what the Measure T says. It says, this act prohibits the city from doing business with any contractors, companies, and consulting firms who knowingly engage in nuclear weapons work. That means any company, even contractors part of a bigger company. So I really need you guys to reconsider working with this contractor. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, any more speakers? That's it?
All names have been called.
Everyone's been called. Okay, thanks. Council members, Councilmember Cal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, both staff and for the many speakers who came out tonight and shared their thoughts and views on this. Clearly, I think we could all agree this is a controversial topic here we have today. I want to ask a few questions, make a few points, a few statements, but questions and to contribute to the discussion. And I apologize if these points and questions are are a little disjointed in terms of the order, but I'll try to get it all out. First, let me say, whatever we pass, if we pass something, or the full council passes something, the provision about not coming back to council is just not going to happen. You know, if it's going to come back to council, it's kind of shocking that the administration would even ask us for that again, even because we've rejected that so many times. So that's a no-brainer, you know, and you know, if we pass something, that part saying without coming back to council will be taken out, and coming back to council will be put back in. That's an easy one. So, and I do have to say that if something is a wholly owned subsidiary, it is part of the company. I mean, that's, you know, that's really not for debate. I mean, that's, you know, but, so let me see if I could make sure I get all my stuff out here. And again, if it's a little disjointed, I'll try to be as thorough as I can. And I will have some questions of staff, so if you're, be at the ready, if you can. I guess let me ask a few questions. You try to do your best to explain. I had a slide up there. Is it possible to bring a slide back up? The one that had that diagram, phase 1 and phase 2, all the things that were included in there. Yeah, operational. I think that was it. Operational capabilities. All the elements of phase 1 and phase 2. You know what things are part of it.
Oh, is that the one with the Port of Oakland person head up there? One of the earlier ones, the big. Yeah, I try the beginning ones.
There's a slide 7.
Yeah, like this one.
Yeah,
7?
that's it.
Try 7. There you go, 7.
Yeah, can you make it bigger?
Mr. Chairman, can we ask that the slide presentation be made available to all members of the committee?
Just let them go ahead. Slide 7. If you can.
If that one slide can be made full screen, that'd be great. Since people are trying
I'll
to
just ask K-Top staff if they can make it bigger.
but while that's coming up, I appreciate that you tried to do your best to identify what is included in phase 1 and phase 2, which also suggests what is not included. I know there's a lot of belief that,
there you go,
that
right there.
certain things. Oh, thank you. That certain things might happen, or are likely to happen, or could conceivably happen beyond what is actually going to happen for phase 1 and phase 2, and a lot of fears, or some fears out there, and I understand that. But I, you know, valid concerns, but I don't necessarily share all those fears. I wanted to ask a few quick questions or confirmation. Right now, there's no expectation or plan to include any cameras in any schools, right? Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I would say right now that I would not support that. And so if you were to do that in the future, if you were to want to do that in the future, you would have to come back to the council and to the school board and get approval for doing that.
And I'll tell you right now, I won't be voting for that. So, but that is clear. You would have to get separate approval for doing that, right?
That is correct.
Okay, good. So that's not going to be part of this. Okay. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Let's see. Now, I asked this question when we chatted last week, just to get some information. So, in terms of various federal agencies, FBI, NSA, whoever, absent a warrant, will they have access to anything that you have that will come at the DAC?
No.
No. Okay. So I know people there don't believe that, and I understand that. They've been very clear about that. But you're clear, and you and the port, you're both clear. Are you on the same page on this? That without a warrant, a judge warrant, whatever a federal warrant, that they're not going to have a permission or access to get what we have that comes through this Oakland-based center, right? Our own local center. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And there was also mention of some regional.
Could I add one comment to that?
Yes, of course.
In terrorism incidents that actually have occurred.
I'm sorry?
In terrorist incidents that have actually occurred, the FBI has responsibility for the investigation. So, of course, the FBI would be coming in and asking for all relevant data to try and find out forensically what happened so that they could further that investigation.
Yes,
we would obviously cooperate with that effort.
If a federal crime has occurred.
Correct.
I'm talking about prior to. The concern is.
Yes.
The concern is prior to things have actually happened.
Right.
Prior to a crime occurring, prior to probable cause. That kind of thing. That's the concern I hear. I think I hear, and that's my question. There was also some previous identification of a regional center that I guess is in San Francisco, operated by San Mateo County. What's that called again?
It's called the NCRIC. It's the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center.
Okay. So will that entity, absent a warrant, have access to this DAC data or information that goes to this DAC?
They would not have direct access into our systems to be able to pull information out.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
They would not have direct access into our systems to be able to pull data out of our systems.
So we, the Port or City, would have to give them something. They can't just grab it or get it or sneak it through, right?
That's correct. It's part of the see something, say something. If somebody reports something to me in the Port of Oakland that's suspicious, I'm the security guy for the Port of Oakland, the maritime side, and I get suspicious activity information every now and then. If something comes to the top and they say, this is something that needs to go to the intel community so they can look at it a little bit further, I will pass that on to them. So there is cooperation between operations and intelligence, but the intelligence people at the NCRIC are not going to have access directly into the data that's in the DAC.
And when somebody, if there is anything that is passed on to somebody outside the city or outside the port in the city, that's documented somewhere, right? I mean, you keep track of that. And would that be available? I mean, would we be able to find out about that?
Any sort of data sharing agreement, if that's what you're asking through the chair, Councilmember Cobb, yes, we will document it. So all these data sharing with any sort of county, city, or any other regional agencies, if needed, then everything needs to be documented. It's based on review, it's based on council approval, so it has to come back to the council and the city attorney approval.
Okay. And then let's see here. I want to get all my initial questions out. I'm sure I'll have more questions as we discuss this. Let's see. We talked about, or somebody talked about the process that has been underway and going forward for the development of a comprehensive privacy data retention policy or set of policies. And I'm wondering if we can summarize that again. And because I feel that that's very important, and I don't want to. Those policies will come back to the council as we directed them to do, and I could tell you right now, I'm not just going to rubber stamp those things. I mean, I would suspect that we'll see a draft or two from you. It'll go out to the community as we've asked it to do, a community meeting before it comes back to this committee, and certainly before it comes back to the full council. And even when it comes back to the committee here, I bet you we're going to add more things into it, and maybe some things you don't even want added into it. Maybe it's going to be a little more strict than you want, but you just should be prepared for that kind of, the buck stops with us, and there could be value in this thing, but we have to have some strong policies to make sure that the community accepts it while still keeping the value that could be there. So let me see here. I did have a question. I'm scratching my head. I did have a question that when this is all up and running and everything, and some staff who's been trained is sitting in the emergency operations center in front of the system, what are they doing, and what can they do? In other words, there was some story, I think a true story, of somebody in Chicago or somewhere, I don't know what it was sitting in some multi-camera system. I don't know if it was a DAC or whatever it was, and it was a slow day, I guess, and he started following around some attractive woman with some cameras around it, which to me is, cause for immediate dismissal. You're fired, goodbye. So can that kind of thing happen absent some triggering of an incident? And if it did happen, are we going to be able to fire the guy right away? Hey, Joe.
Hi. Councilmember Calvin, through the chair. I'm Joe DeVries with the City Administrator's Office. I've been putting together the group that's been reviewing and drafting a privacy policy, and we're about 90% of the way there to provide a draft to the city administrator and then bring it out to public review. And basically what we've done is looked at those worst case scenarios and tried to develop safeguards against exactly that. Make sure that there's a need to know, a right to know if you're in the system, or if you're in the DAC. Make sure that any change in the policy comes back to council first. That's written throughout the draft. And that's exactly the sort of safeguard we're looking for. So we're not looking for what law enforcement would say, well, we want to use this to track crime. I'm actually looking at the worst case scenario where it could be abused and writing in safeguards to stop and prevent that sort of abuse. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the privacy policy. It should be ready in the next week, and then it would go out to public review. I don't want to give an exact date, but we will have a hearing, and we will allow for a month of commentary, and then we will bring all of that back to the council, or to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry? This money came from a federal grant, right? That was very specific, the port and then the city came in. So if the city was not to do this project, that money is not available. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that money would not be available for anything else here locally. It goes back to who knows where in Washington, and we just don't get anything. Is that correct? We could not use that for Head Start or more police or anything like that. Is that correct?
No, unfortunately, that is correct.
That is correct.
The money has to be used for the Domain Awareness Center as it's described now in the investment justification that we put forth to FEMA, and it was approved. So
okay.
If there was more time, we might be able to reposition some of that money for another port security type of project, not some of the things you're talking about. It has to be related to port security.
I see.
Since we share port security with the City of Oakland, that's why the joint project is being put forth.
Okay.
But it has to be used for that. And $1 million of this grant money that we're talking about goes away on May 31st. It's already been extended to the end of its 5-year life. There is no more extensions for the round 9 money, which is $1 million.
Yeah, I understand.
Councilmember, can I come back to you? Let me give a chance to my other ones.
I'm almost finished.
One more? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say I do hope we as a city, Joe, and other departments continue to go after other federal grants for other public safety or non-public safety related things, youth programs, Oakland Unite programs. We should be very aggressive in our grant seeking and all sorts of things that we desperately need for our city. And just in terms of the nuclear-free question, 2 things. One, I don't want to, ultimately I don't want the full council to support a hiring contractor that is
that is in violation of our law, and that we can't do that. I realize there's still some more information to get, which we might be able to get by the time we have the full council next week. I do want to also note that when we approved the thing in November, the resolution in November that got us to this point, that was to move away from that previous contractor to look for other ones, we had said that should come back to the full council. So it wasn't really in the council's direction to bring it to committee first, although you chose to do that, the administration chose to do that. It could have came back to full council. And frankly, because of this, the magnitude of this question, I think this question should be decided at the full council. And so I am prepared today to move it to the full council without necessarily committing to how I'm going to vote at the full council, but I will vote to move it forward to the full council pending additional information that would come out before then. So that's where I'm sitting right now, but I do want to hear more discussion.
Thank you. Councilmember McElhaney. Then we'll go to Councilmember Shea. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the staff for bringing forward a more comprehensive look at the DAC, and particularly Mr. O'Brien from the port. Thank you for coming and giving such a concise definition. I don't think we have heard it so succinctly put and so clearly stated. The need for safety in our city and maritime safety and the protection of our port is critically important. And I think that we should not take lightly the amount of the economic vitality that we rely on in our port, for the food we eat, for the goods that we ship, for the international trade that puts Oakland, as I've said, at the center of the world. But as I sit here today in January of 2014 with the recent revelations that have come out of the Edward Snowden's release of information and what has been discovered and the discussions that we're having at the congressional level about the abuses of power, of extra constitutional powers, I am more disturbed by the DAC than I was at the first hearing in 2013. I don't know that that's a cause for applause. I just know that there are numerous questions. I don't want to impugn any evil motive on our staff. I believe that the staff is hardworking, that you all are highly qualified in your fields, that you deeply love our city, and that you faithfully try to execute the work that's in front of you. But I do know that systems sometimes make us cogs in a wheel, and that some things are not even known to us when we're moving forward. The federal government has made monies available to us, and those monies have come with a set of conditions and criteria that it's not as if Oakland and even the Port of Oakland said, look, here, I have a need. I'm going to go find vendors who can support this need, and I'm going to fund what I need. There's money, and it's come. And it appears that the folks who are most qualified to do these things are companies that conflict with the values that this community has set forth in our procurement policies. It is disturbing. I had a similar frustration when our first responders needed to participate in the regional training. That the regional training and the fact that we want first responders that can do that is an important work. It's a critical work. It's a life-saving work. But the fact that that funding came underwritten by people who have their hands bloodied in the war machine is deeply troubling. So I want to follow up on some specific questions that have been raised by the speakers, but also that have come out of the debate, if I might. The first one is if the city attorney can speak to the question of debarment and the city's obligations with respect to debarment when seeking to contract, and also what happens if the city has inadvertently secured a contract or entered into contracts that are in violation of the city's stated policy.
So, Councilmember, this is Rocio Fierro with the City Attorney's Office, and Celso Ortiz is also present, and he may be able to address your specific question. With respect to the nuclear-free zone ordinance, there is a provision that spells out some due process requirements, and city staff's due diligence is expected for this kind of assessment, whether contractors and vendors seeking funding from the city through contracts fulfill the requirements of this ordinance. And I think there is staff that can determine and let you know what due diligence they proceeded to pursue in anticipation of submitting this to this committee. In terms of debarment, I think what we're talking about in this instance is not debarment, but is a determination on whether they comply with the nuclear-free zone ordinance. As to that, it's a city administrator requirement through purchasing contracts that vendors submit a certification as to whether they comply or not. If, as in this case, there's more information that becomes part of the record, then staff can attempt to do additional due diligence to determine if indeed, based on the most recent information, they meet the requirements of the ordinance. If they don't, then that is submitted to the city administrator, and that's provided in your ordinance. It's a requirement. And the city administrator can then affirm that they do not comply. The decision of the city administrator then is appealed to the city council. So I'm going to defer to Celso Ortiz to see if I didn't answer your question, that he might be able to answer it for you.
Yeah, there is a department ordinance, and it's up to the city administrator to make investigation and do the proceeding under that ordinance.
So the follow-up question,
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I guess the follow-up question with respect to the revelation, if we unknowingly entered, I do understand that there's a waiver provision in the ordinance that we can choose to waive the provision of nuclear-free, but if staff is engaged or the council has entered into a contract, for example, with HP, and it is found that we've already entered into that, what are the remedies or what steps are to be initiated with respect to a contract that has been entered into in error?
If the contract's already performed and the contract has been fulfilled, we would have to look at how we could go back and exercise any remedies that we would have. So I can't say that we would be able to recover.
If we could get an information memo on that, that would be great. I don't want to take up the time tonight,
Sure.
but in terms of just understanding our internal processes and making sure that we have integrity with the process, I think what the speaker said earlier would make some sense. If we have precluded doing business with a vendor who competitively bid and was awarded the contract and then denied the opportunity to perform on that contract because of the ordinance, but then we subsequently enter into other contractors that also are not qualified, it would seem to me that that would be problematic from a legal standpoint. It would be good to have some clarification around that. With respect to the actual build out of the DAC, could someone please clarify for me the total amount of the Phase 1 grant, the Phase 2 grant, and whether or not that these are included in the subsequent return to council under a staffing grant that was referenced earlier in the staff presentation?
Good evening. Related to the grant for Phase 1, there was a total of $2.9 million that was ARA Port Security Grant funding. And that included the concept of operations, the design, and then the build-out that's described there. The first portions of that grant were done by the port under a separate agreement. Phase 2 is $1 million from grant round 9 and $1 million from grant round 10, which is $2 million total that's available for Phase 2. which is proposed there and also includes operations and maintenance.
I'm sorry, Ms. Domingo, that was 1 million in round 9, an additional million in round 10?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's port security grant funding. For the staffing grant, I'm going to defer to Mr. O'Brien because I don't recall the exact amount.
The operational staffing grant was approved. The port put in for that grant funding for grant round 13. You've not seen that. I think you see that that item in a couple months. But the port approved that. It's for $2 million for a 2-year period, 2-year performance period. So about $1 million per year, plus a cost share that's associated with that, which is 25%.
Are these also ARA funds, or what is the source of the funding?
No, this is port security grant round 13.
Port security
to fund
grants.
the operational staffing of the DAC.
This comes out of the DOJ, or is
No, FEMA,
FEMA? Okay.
DHS.
And for the monies that we're receiving through the port security grants, is there additional leverage, matching funds that's required by the local agencies?
No, all the grant funds to date, the ARA round 9 and 10 are already matched, or have no match, or were matched by the port.
Okay, so the port did have to provide a match.
We did for the round 9 money.
For the round 9 money, and the $1 million in round 10 required no match?
Correct.
And round 13 monies for the staffing grant?
It's a 25% cost share.
And is that being provided by the city or the port, or shared?
Shared is what we proposed and what was approved by the board.
Has that come before the council?
Not yet.
So we've accepted a grant that's bound us to a cost share that has not yet come before this body?
We've accepted it. You've not accepted the sub-grant.
Okay.
So that's an item that you'll be addressing, I think in April is what the time frame was.
The time frame says April. And as you all are looking at the build-out and the ongoing operations, I believe at the end of the staff presentation, it talked about the additional phasing in terms of operation and maintenance, and what is the financial obligation for the city and the port on the go-forward of a fully built-out DAC that needs ongoing maintenance, support, and staffing?
Yeah, I can, specific from the maintenance and support perspective, all the technology and systems, our estimate is about $160,000, and that is included in the DIT operations and maintenance budget. It was approved on July 30th, 2013.
$150,000 to $160,000 for what specifically?
Per year for the maintenance and support of the technology systems we have in the DAC.
And that's being borne by the city outside of the grants?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is on top of the grants. This is the O&M. The question that I'm asking now more specifically is that this is 4.9 million in phase 1 and 2 to build it out, an additional $2 million for 2 years of staffing. It seems to me that we're assuming that it's $1 million a year for staffing on top of the $160,000 in operation and maintenance. What is the sustainability plan that says that we can continue to fund the operations of the DAC after the 2-year period that's funded by the federal grant?
One of the requirements of the grant is that for the 2-year performance period, that our region sustain that the DAC for 1 year. That's a condition of the grant. It doesn't say exactly how much we have to spend on the DAC. Once we have the DAC operational and we evaluate how effective it is, what the staffing level is, what the return on investment is, we can determine at that point what the staffing level and the support level would be for the year 3.
And so the staff presentation also talked about hiring or retaining a consultant to do a staffing analysis. Is that being funded 100% by the port?
Yes, it is.
Using port procurement, or you sole source this?
From the Port Security Grant Round 13, we carved out $75,000 from that grant and matched it with $25,000 of port funds to do this staffing study. So it'll result in a very much more specific than we have right now. Right now we have conceptual, but it would be much more specific mix of consultants, staff support for the DAC, exactly what their position descriptions are, what their qualifications need to be, what kind of database access they need, things like that that determine what the level of experience and qualifications are for those people, and look at options as well that we'll be presenting to you in addition to the O&M funding requirements, and the Port Security Grant Round 13 sub-grant agreement would be coming forth all at the same time.
And then as part of the sustainability plan, ongoing grants, apparently there's been 13 rounds of this port security money. You're anticipating that this money is going to be available in the future?
We might be able to get a little more maintenance money. I don't think we're going to get any more operational staffing funds. It's a 2-year shot to get the thing started, to get the program rolling, to evaluate it, and then we have to sustain it organically, locally.
So in the grant that you all submitted, was that prepared only by port staff, or it was jointly with city staff for these prior rounds?
It was jointly prepared, and the port submitted it.
So in the joint preparation of that, there was some contemplation of what it would take to make the DAC functional with respect to the outcomes that you see here. And so could you describe more expressly what that staffing looked like in the grant that was submitted? Are we looking at 24/7 monitoring within the DAC? Are you seeing that the personnel in the DAC are sworn officers or technicians? Is that staffing made up of port personnel and city personnel? Can you describe that a little bit for me, please?
I think all those details are going to be fleshed out a little bit more in this study that the port is conducting, much more specifically, and give you the options. But all of those are on the table, a mix of consultants, staff members. That's essentially what the mix could possibly be. But we need some professionals to come in here and analyze, talk with police, fire, the port, determine exactly what the needs are. Conceptually, when we put it into the investment justification, we asked for approximately 12 people in an hierarchy to both do the watch standing, have supervision over that watch standing, and have an overall DAC watch supervisor that is connected with the various agencies. So that was the concept going forward, but that has to be much more detailed.
I got that. I know when we put together the grants, they're our best estimate, and then we're going to refine it over time. So I appreciate your candor with respect to that. Of the operational DACs that are in the country, can you speak to how they've been effective, whether or not there have been existing privacy concerns that have been raised in other communities like Chicago or New York where these are activated, and how efficacious they've been in deterring or capturing crime?
I really don't have statistics. I know we did visit the Port of Long Beach, San Francisco Airport, a couple of centers that do have PSIMs, the Physical Security Information Management, and the consolidated data feeds, video feeds to make decisions. Long Beach just started theirs probably about 5 years ago, so they're still really just determining the benefits of that system. They have a lot more agencies that come in and sit in their operations center. They call it their operations center, but essentially it's like ours. They have a lot more data feeds in. They built a $22 million facility. It cost them a lot more than what our facility is that we're proposing. Ours is really kind of a minimalistic awareness center to help with first response in the agencies in the area. So it's not nearly as all-inclusive as Long Beach is, but they have a lot bigger port than we do, so they can afford something a lot more. Ours is kind of minimized, but effective, we think.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Has anyone from city staff taken a look at these other centers?
I actually just wanted to step forward with your question about the staffing that you just had, because one of the drafts of the policy is that... Identify
yourself, please, for the public.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Backlund.
I know that, I don't know what's going on with KTOP, but the public can't see you.
I'm Joe DeVries with the City Administrator's Office through the Chair. Thank you. We've actually drafted into the policy that only City of Oakland and Port of Oakland employees, could be in the DAC, that private contractors would not be serving in that role, and people would have to go through the same type of background checks that they would have to work in the police department. So we've actually written some of that into the draft. I just wanted to, because I'm not sure that our port representative was aware of that.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate it. So, Ms. Domingo, has anybody looked at the DACs that are operational in other communities?
The ones we've been looking at, I don't have a lot of data on. The one that we found recently this week that's closest to Oakland, which is a joint type of center, is the Los Angeles. Los Angeles has what they call a real-time crime analysis and operations center, which is law enforcement operated, and it's co-located with their emergency operations center as well as their dispatch center. And we did some other research on that, and we found an article that talked about how effective that center is and has become. It was established in 2004, and they used the systems that they developed along with law enforcement personnel and other city personnel, and they were able to reduce drug activity, crime, nonviolent crimes, and other crimes in a particular area that they were trying to clean up from crime that was very crime-ridden. It was, I believe, MacArthur Park. So there is information about that, and I believe that Deputy Chief Brashears can talk about his experiences or his information related to that system.
Good evening, Eric Brashears, Deputy Chief with Oakland PD. I can't speak directly to your question of other domain awareness centers, but what I can speak to is our belief that this domain awareness center will assist the Oakland Police Department and the Fire Department in our response to a major incident that could occur in the city and at the port. So we believe that the increased communication, the increase in information awareness of what's going on will be beneficial for us in a response. I personally was a first responder at both Oakland Hills Fire and during the earthquake in Oakland, and I know the importance of having a coordinated response to those major incidents and how this will assist us in that regard. What I see for us crime-wise in the city of Oakland is, currently there are existing cameras in the community. They are privately owned by businesses and by residents. We currently use those videos to help us solve crime. In other words, a robbery occurs or a shooting occurs in the community. We have officers, we have staff go out and walk along the street and canvass to see where those cameras are located, to knock on doors, check with businesses and residents to see whether or not we could view the video and see whether or not it might help us solve a crime. It does help us solve crimes, and it is beneficial to our crime reduction strategy in the community. How I really see this, we've internally spoken about this going forward, is we just recently trained, we spoke earlier during the staffing report of new civilian employees that were hired, our police service technicians. We just trained them on how to go out and recover video from crime scenes and how to canvass the neighborhood where a crime occurred, and not only look at if a robbery occurred in a particular intersection or a particular street corner, that you could also walk the direction that the offender fled or arrived from and look for additional cameras there. What we really need to improve on right now is, now that we find these cameras, we know they're out there, our ability to utilize that both internally in an investigation and externally with the public support in identifying who the offenders are. I really see this as being a leveraging with the staff that would be at the Domain Awareness Center, our ability to get that video that we recover from the community cameras and into a system that we can coordinate that, and we can put it on a, say for instance, a Facebook page, on our website, something to help get the public's ability to look at a video and identify offenders in some of the crimes that are occurring out in the community.
So Deputy Chief, your testimony raises some additional questions. With private cameras, those cameras have facial recognition, or
We're talking about,
when they're most useful in terms of identification?
No, it's the technology that the software basically you use with cameras. We're currently using cameras that are in the community, privately owned. If a crime occurs, we go out and look and see, is there a camera or a video that we can use that will help us solve a crime. You see it on news releases, you see it on our website, you see it in other police departments. We've solved crimes using that video. It's very common use in law enforcement. What we do with that video is we very simply take the video, cut a copy that includes the offender, and then we either use that with investigators or internally with our officers, do you know this individual, or we can post it to the public to identify the individual when the time is right based on the investigation.
So is it that you're contemplating the use of technicians inside the DAC that's who would be monitoring these feeds?
Well, I think if you have staff that's, I mean, let's be realistic about the time span for these major incidents that could occur. They're not happening daily. So what we'd anticipate doing is leveraging the staff that's there. If you have staff inside a domain awareness center, why not have them, utilize them, because we're already understaffed with that ability to take this video and coordinate it to where it's usable to put out to the public or for the investigators and have them help with that. That's really how we see using the staff inside there. Potentially. I mean, that's just an idea that we have that we're exploring.
So one of the...
Councilmember we have to give Councilmember Sheff a chance to ask questions.
Absolutely, I'll yield.
Then we'll come back to you. Councilmember Sheff.
I'm going to go back to the issue of the staffing. My understanding is while the port has been awarded that grant, this City Council has not yet approved accepting it, and proceeding with this phase that's in front of us today does not actually rely on us ever accepting any funding for staffing nor having any staffing. I think it's a question for Mike or Renee.
That is correct.
Okay.
We have not accepted the grant. We have not accepted any of the terms of the grant. On the port side, they've accepted the grant, and they've been approved by their board. If we should decide to accept that funding, that we can.
Okay. But I just want to clarify that we could potentially proceed with this phase without ever having any staffing or accepting that grant.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. I just want, and Ms. Gibson-McElhaney, Ms. Gibson-McElhaney, I hope you heard that because I think that's important information. Proceeding with this phase does not require that we ever have any staffing at all, and it does not require that we accept the portion of the grant that has to do with operations or staffing. There's no requirement that we have any operational support or staffing in order for us to add the capacity that is contemplated in Phase 2. Just like right now, we have an emergency operations center, and certain events trigger the standing up of that center. But it is not staffed 24/7, and yet it has capabilities right now that are utilized in emergencies. But I just want to make it very clear that these things are not inextricably bound, that by proceeding right now, because I also was afraid that we had somehow committed ourselves to ongoing operational costs. That has not happened, and in moving forward tonight, we are not committing ourselves to ongoing operating costs, although that request will be made of us in April.
Yes, that's correct.
I thought that was important. I also just wanted to confirm, maybe this is for the city attorney, that if we are delayed and we are unable to complete the project by the June 2014 deadline, and this is an issue that was raised in Ms. Lai's letter, that there are liquidated damages, that there actually will not be a cost to the city if either through our fault or the contractor's fault, the project is not completed by the grant deadline.
We can certainly make that a term in the agreement, that there would be liquidated damages and other recourse for failure to perform by that date.
So that we would need to require that if we are going to have that as a term?
It would be in the agreement itself.
Okay. And if it is through our own fault, is there a consequence to the city? Do we have to return money? I understand that we might return money to the federal government that hasn't been spent yet, but would there be any cost to the city?
That I don't know. I would defer that to the people who are administering the grant.
So if I understand your question, Councilmember Sheff, correctly, you're saying that if there is in the project, if there is a city staff fault and caused some delays in the project. I think we need to take a look at the, we do have the clause about the reason for the delay. Those are some of the things which we have not really negotiated with the contractor. That's what I was talking about in my presentation, that the terms and conditions of the agreement, what are the responsibilities, what are the payment milestones are going to be, they're still pending for discussion and approval, so we have not gone to that extent.
Okay, so don't go away. I'll ask about that next. The report references a detailed statement of work that is in the process of being developed.
Right.
Is there a chance that that might be developed by next Tuesday when this potentially comes to the council, and could we receive a copy of that in our agenda materials?
To be realistic, I don't think so we can complete the statement of work, because we just started the whole draft development of the statement of work. It does require a lot of back and forth between the city, the port, and the Schneider, of course. So it will be very hard, I can tell you that, to complete the whole statement of work.
If that were a condition of our approval of the contract, could you then make it happen?
We'll definitely try our best.
Okay.
If I may, just a point of clarification, what we'd be talking about is it going in the packet on Friday. So it would actually need to be done by Thursday in order to be distributed as a part of the packet, because I'm assuming you want it as a supplemental for council consideration in this following Tuesday through the chair to Councilmember Schaaf.
That would be great if, though, and this is maybe a question for the city attorney with regard to the Sunshine and Brown Act, if the document is not actually in existence on Thursday, could it be brought to the dais on Tuesday night?
Are you referring to the specific scope of work and deliverables?
Yes.
I think certainly what we would recommend is that at least a draft of it with the essentials be provided. If that will be helpful to the council and certainly to the public. Part of your purchasing ordinance doesn't require staff to bring that level of information, but given the nature of this product, you're certainly entitled to request that it be provided to you.
Yes, I appreciate that. And I know we don't usually require it, but we have from time to time, with, but if the draft were there, potentially the council could require certain provisions be in that scope of work as a condition to the approval. I continue to have questions about whether or not Schneider does meet all of the applicable laws, in particular the ban against nuclear weapons contractors. And my understanding is that additional analysis needs to be done in order to fully answer the questions that have been raised. And I do want to appreciate members of the public and even the press. East Bay Express has put an amazing amount of work into this issue and bringing us, as your policymakers, really valuable information, some of which came to us just today. And that is why I think I, for one, am going to need some additional time to analyze that before making a final decision on this issue. And I believe it is fair for the attorneys to say that they, too, need additional time to analyze some of the recent information that has come to us so that they can make a final determination with regard to compliance. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, Councilmember. I think we need more information, and we need to talk to staff and see if the requirements of the ordinance are met in this regard. Once that's determined, then the council can decide whether to waive them or how to adjust those requirements.
Great, but I appreciate that determination has not been fully made, at least not to my satisfaction. And then finally, with regard to the privacy policy, which is something that is really important work, and regardless of what happens with this, it has to be done. This issue of video footage and cameras is not going away, and so we've got to sit down and do the hard work and try and, as a community, establish standards that we can all live with and that we will continue to monitor and keep in place to try and recover some of the trust in government that has been clearly lost over the events of the last few months.
I have been disappointed that the City Council made very clear that we need to have this privacy policy. We required it back in July, and yet no real work has been done with the incredible expertise that we have right here in our community. It's disappointing to me to hear that it's 90% done when there hasn't been community vetting. I think that you have a higher quality product. You have a higher quality product when you invite the public to actually help you write it from the beginning instead of writing it and then requesting their input or approval. So the idea of a blue ribbon commission, which is the first time we've heard of this tonight, whether it has a blue ribbon on it or not, I hope that this commission is comprised of a robust set of people from the public, and that you take advantage of the incredible expertise that is right here. I mean, we heard some people with very valuable credentials here tonight. And so, Mr. DeVries, I have great faith in you. I know that you care about this quite a bit, and that you will engage these people and work quickly to go through the public process, which would have been great if we had started back in July, to develop something that people feel is something that can be a living document and guide the city, not just with this project, but with a number of other issues where we really do need to do a better job of addressing privacy, of being mindful of our data retention, and protecting the civil liberties of our citizens. So with that, I am mindful that, and I'll echo some of what Mr. Kolb said, that this is a very critical project. It's been a robust discussion, again, not just about this project, but about privacy in general as we move into this new era of technology. It is very important we continue to have this conversation, and I do think it's appropriate, as Councilmember Kolb suggested, that we potentially bring it to the council so that the full council can engage in that discussion. But knowing that, I join my colleague in not committing to what position I will take when the additional information is provided to us. And I mean, I was kind of making notes when you were talking, Councilmember Kolb, so I tried to actually make some edits to the resolution based on a lot of what you were saying, which I tend to agree with. I don't know if we want to have another round of discussion. No, no more discussion. I mean, I can just put it out there as a matter of discussion, if you can look at the resolution in your packets.
Why don't we, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
I'm happy to, would you like to speak first, or?
I think, let me just say a couple of words, and I'll let you lay it out. I think I know where we're going, and I think the City Council overall has to review and ultimately make the full decision. And I think you have some work to do from here to the next City Council meeting on this issue. And so that's very clear. But, I think it's great to live in a democracy where we can listen to each other's points of view and respect them. So I'm going to give you mine. All right, just like I listen to yours, I'm going to give you mine. I do believe we need a surveillance center. All right? And I'll tell you why. Because perhaps I live in a different setting, a different area with a different issue on a daily basis than you do. And let me make it very clear. Let me make it very clear. I was here when the officer brought up Firestorm and the earthquake emergency we had. I was here. And I was on the school board when that happened. And when it happened, there was chaos. And most emergencies, they utilize our school sites. Oakland Tech became a center of activity in terms of coordination and lack of between the fire, between police, between everyone was trying to help. So we do need a center that we can coordinate emergencies, and I think that's what it clearly calls for. And it's not the first time nor the last time that we will call for an emergency. Now, when it comes to safety on the street, I wish I didn't have a police officer. I wish I didn't have a surveilling camera. I wish everybody knew how to follow the rules. But there are certain neighborhoods that some of us choose not to. And when you drive in my neighborhood in East Oakland, there's a reason why everybody has a fence, a pit bull, and bars on your window, and is afraid to come out. You don't believe me? Come with me on a Saturday. This past Saturday, I have to call the captain. You know why? You know, you may laugh. I'm going to invite you personally to join me. You ride on the truck, and you go to these sites where we pick up the illegal dumping, the trash, and all, and you ride, and I'll guarantee you, by the time you go, I'm going to invite you personally, because I have people that come for me the first time, and they can't believe what's on Oakland streets. And they go back, and they don't want to come back. All right, and these are individuals that come to Oakland for the first time, but the reality is this. The reality is this, council members. You have to be accountable for everyone's safety. And at this point, Oakland has not been. Has not been, Councilmember Shaft, has not been, Councilmember, we all make reference to the chief about things that are happening, not happening, should be happening. So for me, we got to create, one is, a surveillance center is not the perfect place, and I do agree that we should have a policy when it comes to privacy laws and civil rights. That ought to be the first thing that's in place on how are we going to protect the rights that we have left. Because the reality is we already lost a good deal of them. All right? I mean, I understand that, and I understand I was here when we were in the minority trying to get our civil rights in terms of Latino and African American community. Right? All right. So I understand that very clearly in terms of what a right means. But so right now we're going through a challenging time in this city. And I heard Mr. Sanchez make reference to my daughters went to Oakland High School. My son went to Fremont High School. And I know what that experience is living in those neighborhoods. Now, for me, it's a security camera in some areas. They're all over my neighborhood. And and the robberies are happening, the shootings. They talk about murders. Yeah, they drop, but you don't talk about the shootings because they've gone up. Luckily, people aren't dead, but we're shooting each other. So those are realities that we face in this city. Now, this may be a temporary fix, but when it comes to emergencies, we have to be prepared. Otherwise, everybody's reacting, pointing fingers, and we don't have the order that we should have in the city. So I will support the surveillance, but at the same time, we do have an ordinance in place that deals with nuclear weapons and so forth that we need to adhere for. It was here before me, but we need to be supportive of that. So I understand the contractor that you're going to make a recommendation. And please, when you come up to the council, say, yes, they do meet our full requirement, or they don't. Right? So you need to be prepared to do that. And secondly, when it comes to the city council, I think we need to be prepared to roll it all out, what it means, what is the implication, and respect the entire community and not just a certain point of view. So I do support that effort, and with that, Councilmember Shaft, if you can take us what the recommendation is to the City Council for their consideration and put that on the table for us.
Thank you,
yes,
Chair Gallo. So if you're looking at your resolution, the title has two parts. I'm proposing that we strike the second part. We would strike the language, if negotiations fail with Schneider Electric, Inc., the city administrator or her designee is authorized to negotiate and enter into a contract with another vendor on the DAC Phase 2 evaluations ranking list without returning to council. I think everyone made it clear that if this negotiation fails, we want it to return to council. Okay. On the when it gets to the resolved sections, the very first further resolved, it states that the city administrator or her designee is hereby authorized to execute, and I would strike any amendments or modifications to said port city agreement, because that is not something that has been discussed with us today. I would strike that language and just say that the city administrator is authorized to execute the professional services contract with Schneider Electric, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $1.2 million. And then I would add the language, pending a determination of its full compliance with applicable laws, including Oakland's nuclear weapons ordinance. Okay, and I'll give this to the clerk. It's my bad handwriting, but so that addressed.
Are we clear on the direction that we're going to send to the council?
Was there anything more?
And then one last, on the very last further resolved, I think we could just add the phrase, again, the last further resolve reads that the agreements or other actions authorized hereunder shall be reviewed and approved by the Office of the City Attorney for form and legality and filed with the Office of the City Clerk. And I'd like to add, and shall comply with previous resolutions regarding this project, particularly successful adoption of a privacy and data retention policy as a condition of project implementation. I know we passed that previously, but I think we enjoy reiterating that at every step of this project because that is something that I think is important to all of us.
I'll second that.
Okay, are you going to make reference to the policy that's being created in the commission to deal with privacy?
That last was intended to reference that. Again,
okay.
It says successful adoption of a privacy and data retention policy as a condition of project implementation.
Good. So we're clear then?
If I point of clarification, if I may, by including a reference to full compliance with applicable laws and with the nuclear-free zone ordinance, if that is included in your resolution, you may be precluding the council from exercising its rights to potentially waive some of these requirements. So you may want to adjust that. If indeed it's the council's policy to recommend that the council do not waive it, then you can include this requirement. But you do have the right to waive the application of the ordinance.
Okay. It is not my understanding that I am precluding us from waiving, but before we even have that discussion, the determination must be made, and my understanding is the city administrator must make the recommendation and also provide the proof of no alternatives. And so I don't think that this is precluding our consideration or even grant of a waiver, but I'm just saying we are not approving the negotiation of a contract until this determination is made, because right now it is inconclusive. But it's not my intention to preclude us from taking other actions that we are allowed to under the law.
So one suggestion could be that instead of full compliance, that you request that city administration provide you a full record and a determination of compliance with the ordinance. That could be, I mean, I think legally you don't preclude the council. I'm just suggesting that you broaden that and specifically request that a determination be based and the additional information be considered by staff. So you have that determination included with this for the council agenda. That's a recommendation. You can include this language if you like.
Okay. I'm not entirely clear what you're suggesting. I don't know if you want to make a specific language recommendation. Right now it says pending a determination of its full compliance with applicable laws, including the nuclear weapons. So.
Right. Okay. So that would be fine. I think what I heard you say is full compliance with the nuclear-free ordinance. So you're referencing determination?
Determination.
Okay.
Pending a determination of its full compliance.
They come together. They're joint.
Does that address your concern?
And just for clarification, it's officially called the Nuclear-Free Zone Act, I believe.
Okay. Well, you can use the nuclear-free.
And I did have, if I may, one clarification for the amendments that you, Councilmember Schaap, put in. Do we want, I realize you took out the whole second title, which means you're also removing one of the further resolved, which is a repetition of that title. Is that right?
I must have missed that.
If such negotiations are unsuccessful?
it's essentially repeated in their further resolved. Third from the, or I guess third from the bottom,
The second further resolved?
last page.
Oh, yes, yes, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Right.
Yes,
So-
and yeah, to strike that full paragraph.
Right. So now this wouldn't prevent, if we can't do this contractor that is up for consideration, this wouldn't prevent just having a discussion, for the administration having a discussion with another contractor to explore a third option. But obviously that would still have to come back to the council. I mean, that's a definite. Okay. All right. We're fine. So I'm seconding the amended resolution proposal here.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
And then just quickly, as a request, I'm also requesting that you bring back the draft statement of work in the supplemental report. That doesn't need to be part of the resolution, but that is a request. Thank you.
So we got our city administrator, we're clear? Good. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded I believe by consensus.
Abstained on this motion?
You're going to abstain, 1 abstention, and 3 yeses to send it up to City Council. And we thank all of you for being here, and we'll see you at the council meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I
I
could take a moment of personal privilege before we go to open forum, and just ask that we can adjourn tonight's meeting in honor of Justice Tolliver. Justice is the young woman, the 17-year-old who was fatally shot by her brother. Marilyn Washington of the Gaddafi Foundation is receiving donations on behalf of the Tolliver family. Justice is survived by a 2-year-old child. For anyone with information or wanting to support the family, they can contact the Gaddafi Foundation. That's KHADAFY foundation.org. The telephone number is 510-839-1706. We also want to remind people that Mario Tolliver Jr. is still not yet back in the custody of his family or in the care of the system at this time, and we're asking people to just continue to pray for the family for this deep tragedy that has happened in our community.
Thank you. Last speaker.
Derek Morris.
Derek Morris.
Is this open forum?
Yes. Open
Thank you.
forum.